Welcome to Takeoff. I'm Ernest Singleton, your host. Takeoff is actually an interactive, I'd say an interactive, immersive podcast experience about honesty and transparency, and a look into the music business and how it positions its future to remain relevant in this time and space. We're relevant with artists, with writers, with aggregators, with executives, and of course, with fans. And this is the C-Suite. Today, we will have a conversation about women, Black women, women of color in the music and entertainment industry. You've all heard about the glass ceiling. I'm sure you have. Well, my guest today is a ceiling breaker. Phenomenal woman. Her name is Cassandra Mills. And Cassandra, you are the official ceiling breaker. Welcome to Takeoff.
Ernie, it's my pleasure to spend this time with you.
It's great seeing you. Thanks again for taking off with me. Cassandra, me and you have known each other for quite a while. We know a lot about each other, but not the journey. However, I do know how historically your contributions have become. I said have become because some things we take for granted when they're happening, but you have become an icon in the entertainment industry, in the music content spaces, artist management. Your influence on artists, executives, and people in the content space has been far-reaching globally. So it's been a long time since you and I have connected like this. In fact, we never connected like this before.
So we're in a different age.
What have you been up to, or what have you been up to, and what's going on that you can share with us?
What have I been up to? I think the best way to summarize my activities since the last time we really communicated is just to say I've moved on to the next chapter. Just like the industry has moved into a new chapter and a new age, so have I with my career and the goals and pursuits that I have this day. Of course, I've had to retool myself and my ideas and how I want to be perceived and the kind of properties and projects an artist that I wanted to align myself with. And I basically focused on creating a hit list that would enable me to do exactly that. You know, I knew that I never really wanted to be one thing. When I say one thing, meaning it would, you know, when I met you, Ernie, you remember I wasn't a music executive. I was an artist manager. And before that, I wasn't really an artist manager. I was 3 or 4 other things. And so by that, I just mean I've always done multiple things. And the idea of just being a record executive was never something that was appealing to me. And the thing that I love about the digital age that we're in and this time of creating and understanding your brand and what your skill set is and all these different things, it's an age that I feel that was developed, you know, for me to move the way I like to move, which is kind of over here and over there and all of that. So I'm very active in music. I'm currently working on a soundtrack. I'm not a soundtrack. I'm currently doing a music supervision of a motion picture that will be coming out this fall. I have a film deal set up with one of the major studios here in Hollywood. I just closed a television docuseries deal. And I am in the middle of raising capital with a business partner for our multifaceted entertainment company. So those are like the broad strokes. And then, of course, I'm still very involved in, you know, artist management and consulting and the whole beauty world. And so, it's a merry-go-round.
I mean, you've been a supermodel, a superstar artist manager, one of the first Black women to be the president of a label when you did your thing with Irving Azoff at Warner Brothers and Giant Records, which was pretty revolutionary. I mean, you worked with, you know, you owned your own beauty in cosmetic company.
Right.
You've done soundtracks for TV. You've done major motion picture soundtrack, and as a music supervisor, which is a rarity. An all around entrepreneur. I mean, to me, you know, we had a record out back in the day on an artist, and the name of the song was Superwoman, that most people know. You are a bona fide superwoman. But I need to ask you, did I leave anything out? Because you've done a lot.
No, but I'm far from being a superwoman. But I do love the fact that I have always.
I thought you were going to say you have humility, but go on.
Well, that too. But I've always imagined myself doing more than one thing. You know, my mother told me a story the other day, and it had me laughing to, high heavens of how it was hard for her to punish me as a kid growing up because, if she took something away and said, go to your room, she came in my room, I found something new to do. I'd create something to do. I'd make something. I would, I was never idle. And I think that I live my life like that. That's the only reason I brought that up. I think that I have always thought that you have to stay in a constant mode of change and reproduction. You got to be like water. Water conforms to whatever you put it in. You put it in a pool, it's pool water. If you put it in a pot, it's boiling water. If you put it in, you know what I'm saying? If you put it in a glass, it's drinking water. It's, it conforms. And so I've always tried to remind myself to remain adaptable like water. And that's just helped me move into the digital age and do it without looking back at, I wish it was like before, or blah, blah, blah. I don't look at anything like that. It's like, if it's done and it's over, it's the past.
So how did you get in this crazy business?
I wasn't trying to be in this business. I was, the only other job that I've had besides being in this business, I had for 1 year, and I was a flight attendant. And that job began to open a door for me where I created this concierge service on the go where I had all these days off. As a flight attendant, you work, 3-4 days, 5, sometimes a week, and then you got 2 weeks off. So I started doing these, I would meet a lot of people, and I started this concierge service where I would, take care of whatever it was a person needed. Like, if you need somebody to take your car into the Mercedes place to be serviced, or wait for the gas man to show up and turn, just that kind of stuff. And I was doing it for celebrities, and that led me into the world of entertainment. That is how I got introduced, basically. I was just doing that as basically my side hustle, what we would call today my side hustle. And my pursuit was really modeling, and I was going to go down that road. And but at the same time, the entertainment world, the connections that I was making, and the doors that I was knocking on were starting to take off. So one of the first people I worked with, obviously, was Stephanie Mills, and she was very unhappy with a record deal at the time with 20th Century Fox. And I looked at the contract and told her I thought there were a couple ways that she could be out of this contract, having studied, the very basics of business law in college. And so I wrote a letter to what was at the time the most powerful attorney in the music business.
Okay.
His name was Alan Grutman.
Yeah.
And Grutman, he's still a big name. He's still a very big group. But I think now his clients are like Taylor Swift and all the big record execs and all that. But at the time, he was representing everybody from Michael Jackson and Madonna to, Russell Simmons and Diddy and all of that. So, Diddy wasn't in the game yet. But so anyway, I wrote him a letter, and I took this contract and I outlined everything that was wrong with the contract. And I gave him what I thought was the counterpart law of how she could get out. of how they should, these are the clauses that I think are breakable and the way by which she can be, you can get her out of this deal. And Alan Grubman responded to that letter by calling, giving me a phone call and saying, I'm looking to speak with the attorney named Cassandra. And I was like, I'm Cassandra, but I'm no attorney. And so, long story short, Alan tried to recruit me to become a lawyer at his law firm in New York. And that was basically my true entrance into the game, because when I told Alan that I was really, look, this is just my side hustle. I'm just doing this because I think Stephanie can get out of this deal. She doesn't like it, blah, blah, blah. And Alan was like, and I told him that. He was like, so what do you do? And I was like, well, basically I'm like her assistant, but I wasn't even her manager at that point. And I said, but I model, and I'm building a career in that, and blah, blah, blah. And Alan had me come in and see him. And at the time, what I didn't know is he also represented like Christy Turlington and Naomi Campbell, all these different
everybody. Yeah.
And so he was like, after sitting with me, he was like, look, I represent all these girls. You're a brain. That's what you are. And you can't go into modeling. And I was like, what do you mean? You can't do it. You really need to be in this business. And so he was really pushing me into a direction that my mother was pushing me into. My mother kept telling me, I think you should make your money with your brain. Don't make your money with your looks. Your looks will fade. Your brain will still be there.
Your mom was right. Your mom was right.
Yeah.
So I'm taken off by congratulating you today as a woman for having the courage to take the moves, make the moves you've made, for having the resilience to achieve. Here's one of the most renowned law firms in the history of the entertainment industry, trying to recruit you back in the day, right? So you were doing this at a time when most women were secretaries or administrative assistants. Women weren't in the driver's seat in corporate America. No, few places, but very, 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 very few. So you were like, who was your role model? Let me ask you that before I make another statement. Because other than your mom.
Of course, my mom. But beside my mom, once I started looking at music, it was Suzanne DePass and Sylvia Rome. Mm-hmm. They were the two bigwigs in the business in terms of females. And I can remember verbatim the moment, the day that I met each of them for the first time, each one of them for the first time, and the response that I even got. So it's kind of funny, but I didn't have any quote-unquote role models at that time. And maybe that's why, Ernie, I was so fearless, because I didn't have anything that told. My mother raised me to believe I could do anything. That was the prevailing thing that she always said. You can do anything, period. Anything. So I was raised to believe there was no ceiling, barriers, areas that I couldn't go into. I was raised to think that. And I was, I started college at 16. I was skipped a couple of times and in grade school, because I had the benefit of being private tutored a good chunk of my life. I got hit by a car when I was young. For almost 3 years, I couldn't walk at all. I was literally an invalid. But my father was very adamant about, once they finished all the resetting of my bones and all of that stuff, which took a couple years to have happen properly. And then when the rehab started, they said, she may not walk, the same and all that. And my dad was adamant that wasn't going to happen. So he just took it upon himself to give me a choice between bending my leg and doing the rehab, which was awful painful for somebody who'd been in bed for almost 2 years, over 2 years, and now going through the rehab period, which was another year. So it was really hard to really learn how to, walk again. but my father was insistent.
So Cassandra, you groomed so many artists, even people in film. Did you have any idea that you would impact the culture the way you have today?
I want to say yes and no. The truth being, you never know what tomorrow holds. But I knew once I got to Giant that I was doing things different. And my biggest concern once I got there was telling people, please don't tell me the rules. Because you remember when I became a record executive, I had no experience as a record executive.
Exactly. Yeah,
I had no experience. And so, which is why everybody was like, what is she doing here? How did she get that job? And who is Irving? And why would he hire her? And, so there was all of that. And I had no experience. And then I had people wanting to tell me, well, you got to do it this way, and you got to blah, 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 and you got to blah, blah, blah. And I kept telling people, in my head, like, please just don't tell me the rules. As long as I don't know the rules, I didn't plan to get here. But I obviously did enough things right that I'm here. And not only wasn't I here with Irving, but 3 days after Irving convinced me to come work with him, David Geffen called me to come work with him. Geffen tried to get me to come run his Black music division when he moved to MCA, when he got that deal. And I had that meeting and said, I already promised Azoff I'm going to go work for him. So it's just, really interesting. And I think it was just based on my success as a manager. I was beginning to make a lot of noise as a manager. And Alan Grubman forcing me to stay in entertainment was probably one of the best moves that was ever made in my career. And then it was my mother and Azoff collectively, the two of them, independent of each other, but they both told me the same thing. Because initially when Irving asked me to come work for him, I said no.
Yeah, but it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, to be recruited by and then to have the privilege to work with someone like Irving, and you became the president of Giant. I mean, it didn't take him long to recognize that he needed to elevate you. And Irving has always had a great eye for talent, which is phenomenal.
And you worked with him, so you know how great he is to work for. He is a wonderful. He's such a visionary, and he's so. He was probably the perfect person for me to be a protege to, because he was the male counterpart to my having hands in all these different things. And as I was telling you, I like to be ambidextrous. I like to have my hands in all these different things. And once I began working for Irving, and I realized that's exactly who he was, this manager who was incredible at that, but also this incredible executive, this incredible record executive who was also producing films, and he was doing all of these different things, buying corporations and, all of it. And he gave me a front row seat. That was the deal that I made with him. I made the deal. When Irving first asked me to come work for him, the first time he asked me, I was with Lou. We were at lunch. And so Irving called after we had that lunch meeting, the three of us, and asked me to go to lunch with him. And he said, I'd like you to come work for me. And I was like, work for you? I'm going to beat you. I didn't know I didn't know who I was talking to.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know Irving like that at the time. You guys did, but I did. And it was a pleasant lunch, and it was like, okay. And I think Irving was a little shell-shocked that I would be like, no, I don't want to work for you. And all of that. And then we had another meeting. The first meeting was in, I think, at the Four Seasons, and the next one was at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And I still said, nope, I'm still not.
Yeah.
And it was the third meeting.
Irving doesn't take no for an answer, so yeah.
Yes. My third meeting was a dinner meeting at his house. And on the way to the meeting, my mother called me in the car and said, so I was thinking, you said this guy's a pretty big guy, right? And I was like, yes. And she was like, well, I think you should, consider it as 4 more years of college. And I think maybe you should consider working for him. And I was like, okay, Mom, well, I'm pulling up. I'll call you when I leave here.
Wow.
And
That's amazing.
when I got to Irving's, it was very daunting, the whole experience of, pulling up and the servants and the whole thing. And, we sit down to dinner. And the long story short, when Irving talks to me, he says, so I've been thinking about what you said to me. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you said that you didn't want to work for me because you want to be me. And he said to me, well, if you want to be me, you need to come learn from me. And that's exactly what my mother had just told me.
Interesting.
So I said to him, when he said that, to me, that was divine intervention.
Yeah.
That was God confirming, because I know that I'm raised and built on that principle.
They say mother knows best.
And so when he said that, I was like, did you talk to her? And
Amazing.
I told him on one condition, and he said, what's that? And I said, I work for you and you only. I report directly to you, and you have to teach me everything.
That was awesome. Yeah. And what a great teacher. I mean, look at all the things you accomplished. And artist development-wise, you developed quite a few artists, and you spent a lot of money doing that. And speaking of artist development in today's environment, with so much technology and AI going on, gone are the days when executives or record companies spend a lot of money on artist development. But you happen to be working right now with somebody who's pretty interesting, Max Goose, and the artistry. And you guys have Sweetie. That is a true case study of artist development.
Well, that's a tribute to Max Goose and Monica Payne and the team over there. Max is a visionary, and the greatest thing about that, and not just her, because I think that if you look at the kid that he's got exploding right now, Donnell, the teenager, the African from he's out of England, but he's Zimbabwean, I believe. He just signed this girl, this rap girl, Amanetta, who is going to be a superstar. They have B. Bozeman over there. They have, Max gets it. But the funny thing, Ernie, that you don't understand, or that most people don't know, is that I gave Max his first record deal, his first record gig with me at Giant.
How did you meet Max?
Irving and I went to, remember that?
Dr. Irving, I love it.
Remember that network called The Box?
Yes.
So Irving was going to buy The Box, and he took me with him. He took me on this week-long trip where we went to New York, and he raised $75 million. And then we got on a plane and went to Florida to buy The Box. And so Max was working at The Box.
Okay.
And we met Max there. That was where we met Max. And from there, he and I stayed connected. And it turned out that Irving, at the 11th hour, after we did all the due diligence and whatever, didn't end up wanting to buy The Box. But I had that I met Max and exchanged information, and we stayed in touch. And I ended up giving Max a job at Giant. And I ended up telling Max something that he tells me to this day is the thing that he looks at the most as an executive when he's, looking at talent and determining if it's somebody he wants to work with or that he believes he can, lead into stardom. And my thing to him was, don't look for the diamond. Everybody's looking at the diamond. Everybody can see the act that's already shining on their way to that. Find the act find the diamond in the rough, the one in the dirt that doesn't look like a diamond. But, if you wash it up and polish it and do this and that to it, it'll shine bright and be a big star. And he told me to this day that he has used that through his Sony years, through everything. He said that is the one piece of it, one of the few pieces of advice that he has taken with him through the full journey of his music career.
That's pretty amazing. You said, don't look at the diamond. You have polished I won't use the old term about what you polish, but you've polished a lot of artists and turned them into diamonds. So in thinking about artist development again today in this tech space, do you think that AI and tech tools have leveled the playing field on artist development for younger artists and even for executives?
I believe that those things have a place in it, but I don't think that they replace it. And the reason I say that is that we don't have a Whitney Houston example of somebody who is a superstar and a direct product of those digital tools. We don't really have that person that we can point to. And to me, like the closest thing to it is someone like a Justin Bieber, who, the whole digital world is really how he got it. It's how he got on. But then he ended up with people like, after Scooter and that whole group. He ended up in that camp with L.A. Reid and Usher and all these people who could pour into him and give him those artist development steps that you need, because you don't work with an Usher or L.A. Reid or anybody like that without finding out those things about becoming a superstar that are critical and important in that journey.
Were you thinking at all about technology and how technology would play a role in the space when you went to Warner Brothers Giant with Irving?
I wasn't at the time that I was in that process, not like that, but I was adaptable and amenable to it as it was developing along the way, and certainly had, emails and stuff that I sent to Irving of things that were developing in the tech world before the whole, I think about 95 is when it started to come into full-fledged, okay, the tech age is really here. But it started, the file sharing and the swapping and all that stuff started earlier than that, and it started in the 90s. And I was meeting with people and talking about them and hearing some of those things that made a lot of sense. It just made sense. I look at things like this. And for me, this is why I was like, please don't tell me the rules about the music business. But when I did the homework, when I started to do the studying, what I started to realize is that music was constantly evolving. And, I've always had this water theory that you've got to be adaptable. And so when I say music was always evolving, the best way to give you reference to follow the conversation is, it was first 78s and then it was 33s. Records, and then it went to 45s, and then it went to cassette tapes, and then it went to CDs.
That's an evolution.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So music is all. So to me, I saw that. I saw the evolution. So I immediately started thinking that there are no rules. So that's why I was saying, please don't tell me the rules, because this shit is changing every day. even then, it was changing to me.
Yeah.
Even then, it was like it's changing to me. So everything that I did as a record executive was different. In other words, I didn't do anything the way the industry did it. So the way I made soundtracks, when I made New Jack City with rapping and singing and pop and all that in one, it's the compilation soundtrack. I created that model. And that's still that is the model that we use. That is
everybody.
That is now the industry standard for making a soundtrack with multiple artists and all that. And when I was doing it, people were telling me, you can't do this. You can't put this and that together. And I was like, but why? Because you can.
Yeah.
I was like, but why? So that's the whole point. I never saw, I saw the evolution. I never saw the boxes, the boundaries. And maybe that's a good and a bad thing, because when you don't live within the boxes, of course, you make a lot of enemies, you piss a lot of people off. But at the same time, you innovate a lot, and so you bring a lot of new things your way. You bring a lot of new people into your fold because of it.
You rewrote the book on so many things. That should be a whole nother conversation series for me and you to go into, because when I think about what you did with movie soundtracks and how you revolutionized it and the kinds of sales that came from it and what you did with TV stuff. But I don't want to dwell on that, but I do want to dwell on this. Oftentimes we all have these instances where we say, man, I wish I would have did this, or that one got away from me. Do you have a story about one that got away from you?
I do, but I don't know if I could call it a get away from me story.
Okay.
In fact, I have two. I'll tell them both very quickly. The first one is when I was president, during my tenure at Giant, I got a call from Matthew Knowles about Beyonce, about Destiny's Child. It wasn't about Beyonce per se. It was about Destiny's Child. And at the time, she was only 14. And I was like, she's just too young, you know. And I was like, he didn't have to, everything that he was like thinking he was going to show me how talented the group was, I'd already seen. You know, I saw the Star Search piece. I saw, you know, who didn't see them on you know. And she was only, I think she was 15. And I was like, she's just so young. Not that she can't do it, but this industry, you want your daughter to be older. And I just, you know, it's not like I wouldn't do it because I was like, nah, they're not talented. I just didn't want to, I didn't feel comfortable. There were a lot of things that I said no to as a woman in business, and especially as a female president, things that men might have done, I just wasn't comfortable with. Like, I wouldn't do the first round of certain kinds of rap. I wouldn't do the misogyny. I loved rap, but it was like, can I do it in a different way? Because I was also being called by everybody from, so how come this is okay? You know, we went through that period where, you know, and I was like, it's not that, and people were like, Cassandra, you're in the business. You should be the one to stand up and say it's not okay. And I was like, yeah, but it's not right to say that it's not okay. That's that person's form of expression. We have the right to like it or not like it, but we don't have the right to say they don't have the right to do it. And you know, I don't want to be used like that. So I would never stand up against it from that perspective. But what I wouldn't do is sign certain things, because now here I would have been putting myself in a, you know, being a hypocrite.
Yeah. So what was the second one?
And the other one that I think is the bigger one is just as I was leaving Giant, I was about to sign J-Lo. And I left the deal on the table and they didn't close it.
Wow.
You know, they didn't close it. And they didn't think she was cute. They didn't think she, the promotion. I set up a big dinner with, you know, all the pop promotion guys, because I know that I was going to need them. So I wanted all of them to meet her and get a sense. And to me, she was such a star. Even when we had our first meeting, she's like, why you want to make a record with me? You know, what kind of record? You know, and I was like, no. I was like, hey, if Janet can make a record and Paula can make a record, you can make a record. You know, you can sing as well as they can, you know. And, you know, and we started talking about what it would be like. And we did the whole meetings. And it was going to be, I was going to do this deal whether the pop guys wanted me to or not, because I knew that just like they didn't think I was making the right soundtrack, but at the end of the day, everybody ended up, we got a smash and all the areas ran with it. You know what I'm saying? I was like, but I was giving them a chance to come into the fold.
Yeah, a lot of people may not have realized what incredible intuition you have always had. I mean, I met you in the 20th century days. Most people don't know what that is. But you always had that intuition. So a lot of times people don't see and don't recognize forward-thinking people. If I got to ask you, if you could go back and give a 25-year-old Cassandra Mills some advice on how to be successful today in this space, what advice would you give the 25-year-old you?
What advice? You know, I don't know that I only have one regret from that era that I didn't do, that I felt like I should have done. I was offered the position of becoming CEO of Capital, and I didn't fight to make that happen, and I should have. So that's probably the only thing that I would have done different. But I can't say how my life would be different now had I done that. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I would still be at a record label, kind of like how Sylvia is. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I don't. You know what I'm saying? Once you go there, you kind of can go anywhere. But I don't really know. I think the thing that I've always done is just live for today. You know, and I think that's really the most important thing. And to ask yourself, you know, what is it that I want to do? I always try to ask myself, if you could do anything you want, what would you do? And I always have a list like that going in my life. And I try to find moments where I go and pull something off that list and just go for it. You know, if you think about it, even the beauty company, I had no experience. I had no background. I had no for doing that. And then I built something that everybody from the Louis Vuitton company came to me before they did Fenty. They built Fenty off of my brand, you know. But everybody from them to Estee Lauder to MAC to all these big brands came after what I was doing.
So you say just do you.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think that's it. I think you have to allow yourself to explore. You know what I'm saying? Because people want to make you be something. And I think that's probably the worst thing we can do. Because once people get locked into being something, they're in the box. But if you don't get locked in, then you're never in the box. So you're always trying to discover, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? What is it that I'm good at? What is it that I want to do? You know what I mean?
That's pretty interesting, because you're comfortable in your own skin. You think out the box, and it sounds like you repel or reject people who are trying to steer you in a direction that is it safe to say not a creative direction? Because you're a creative being.
I'm definitely a creative being, and I think that almost all of my work shows my high sense of creativity. More than anything, it shows my sense of creativity. Like if you lined up all the projects, you say, okay, I get it. I get what this is, even if I don't know that. I get what this is, because it's just a sense of creativity. And so I always feel like, that quote in the Bible that, we were made in the image of God, and he made us to be like him and do what he does. And so when I look at Genesis, I see him saying, and God said, and it was, let there be light. And God said, let the darkness be separated and let the waters. So he was creating this earth, and he made us to create like him. So I think that there's something about that I am, that is at the core of who I am. And I process things like that. I don't even want to say that I'm smart enough to do that on my own. I'm just saying that's just the default that's built in me. So I go about creating things. Like starting from zero is nothing to me.
You're amazing. You're an experienced trailblazer. I mean, Black women have played and continue to play such a major role in music and entertainment. You're you are a ceiling buster. You've a major trailblazer. You've broken the glass ceiling. You've gone places without even somebody guiding you. You go there and you figure it out, and you even ask for directions when you need to, but you ask the right people for directions. But you are a ceiling buster. Most women, certainly women of color, will never get a chance to be in the C-suite, the boardroom, where the decisions are made. Tell our audience about the importance of experienced women teaching younger ones how to accomplish their goals and how to strive and be successful in this environment?
I really think representation matters. We've heard that, especially during this social awakening that the culture has gone through, that the nation and the world has gone through during this pandemic. And the thing that I would tell a young woman who wants to be a professional, who wants to be in business and of any type, I would just tell them what Kenny Gamble told me, which is, learn the business, study it, find out what makes it tick, find out whatever the industry it is you're interested in, understand it at its core. So when I first went to Giant, Kenny Gamble called me and asked me to come meet with him. So I went to Philadelphia and met with him. And he told me a bunch of stuff, Ernie. He said, write it down. None of it made any sense to me that day. Yeah. I was 23, I think, and none of it made any sense. But I wrote it all down. And then later I began to refer back to some of the things that he said. And the biggest thing that he said to me that day is that if you're going to work in a corporation, just remember this. Corporations are driven by one thing, profit and loss.
That's right.
And you have to understand how you can affect the profit of the business if you want to be successful in it.
So you went to Kenny Gamble. So I was inquiring about experienced women. Are you saying that to say that it doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man to take the mentorship from male or female?
Absolutely. I didn't have the female mentors. I met Suzanne DePass and I met Sylvia Rome, but neither one of them chose to mentor me.
They were busy.
Yeah, they were busy busting their own ceiling. So I get it. And I'm not saying that to say that they should have. I'm saying they were busy doing their own things. And so I just took it upon myself to be a sponge and to learn from anybody who had the knowledge. Knowledge is not, it's not gender specific. It comes from both male and female. So to me, it was about, who do I know? It goes back to that, okay, who's the biggest lawyer in the entertainment world? I don't know him, but if I put the right package together and I do it the right way and FedEx it to him, it's going to land on his desk. It's either going to make him say, who the fuck sent me this? Or what is this? Or, hey, this is good, right?
It was.
So you get your foot in the door. That's all you know what I'm saying? But you got to do the homework. I would have never gotten that call from Alan had I not, taken that chance. And in fact, it's that move that I made. This is how close me meeting you was the early days of my career. Because it was that move that brought me and Stephanie Mills to MCA, where I met MCA Universal, where I met you and Irving and Bull and all of that for the first time.
Yeah.
So it was that move that opened that door.
Yeah.
So that's how early it was maybe I'd been around the management game for a year before that, maybe 18 months if it was a little longer, but pretty much the beginning of my career.
My God.
You didn't realize that, right?
I didn't know it was the beginning of your career. No, I did not.
I was doing stuff with management, and I was every little thing. I was, how do I make this work? I never just assumed something. I always had a game plan, and the game plan emanates from doing the homework.
I thought the whole while that Stephanie Mills easing down the road, you were there guiding the darn pathway, girl. We have to do a part two, because there's more that I didn't even get to with you that really has a lot to do with the culture and the space and women empowerment. So I'm going to come back to you for another half. But it's really been great catching up with you. We got to take off again soon. I'm going to say much success to you, and you got to tell me and tell our viewers how do they connect with you? How do they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Hotface1 and on Twitter at CEO Mills. Hotface is HAUTEFACE1, the number 1. And that's how they can find me. So come find me. Come find me.
Great. Thank you, Cassandra.
Thank you,
To
Irving.
everyone in our audience, engage us at any of our socials: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and coming soon to everywhere you get your podcasts. Remember to subscribe, like, and share us. Thanks again for joining us on Takeoff. Thanks again to my guest, Cassandra Mills. Until next time, I'm Ernie Singleton. Musically yours. I'm out.